During the initial era of the Shunyuan realm, formidable creatures dominated the landscape. Resources, however, were in short supply. Future generations would come to know that time as the Age of Desolation. For countless ages, spiritual energy was rekindled once more. The demon clan humans and cultivators each ascended to positions of power. In the Shenyuan realm, a prosperous era known as the Age of Cultivation began. However, fueled by their insatiable greed, the cultivators ravaged the land, seizing spiritual herbs and sacred territories while mercilessly subjugating the demon clan. Driven by the pursuit of resources, they showed no hesitation in initiating conflicts. In situations where ownership was out of reach, they opted to demolish it. Numerous sects have now emerged. The availability of resources is dwindling. The ancient creatures began to awaken again. In this perilous realm, survival depended on allegiance to a sect. This desolate era had come to be recognized as the Second Desolation. In the spiritual herb garden of Z insect, an enormous plant unexpectedly expelled something from its mouth, and a young man came tumbling out. Tianyun was a servant in the outer sect of Z insect. With a frustrated swipe, he cleared the dirt from his face and muttered under his breath, "Teach, it's merely pollination." There's no reason to get all worked up. He decided it would be best to return when their mood had improved. At that moment, a lively voice rang out. Tian, the senior brother, was addressed. The character invited them to join in the meal, emphasizing that a satisfied stomach was essential for putting in a strong effort. An outer sect disciple named Mao caught her attention, prompting her to wave at him with enthusiasm. Today's meal featured a delightful dish that quickly became her favorite durian chicken stew. Tianyuan's expression brightened with delight. He thought it was impressive. As he made his way over, perspiration trickled down his face, prompting a swift wipe from him. With a bright smile, she announced that everything was ready and it was time to eat. Grateful for the assistance, Tianyuan flashed a smile at Miao. Within his thoughts, Tianyuan pondered silently. He recognized himself as a mere gardener within the sect, lacking any notable recognition. In a previous existence, the protagonist entered the world with legs that could not support them, restricted to a tiny garden where they spent their days surrounded by blooms and greenery. The character's physical form was confined to a limited range, yet their spirit constantly aspired to explore the vast realms of cultivation. Everything shifted on the day when a radio broadcast reached their ears. According to the horoscope for Sagittarius, immense fortune was on the horizon. A significant success was imminent. Upon reopening their eyes, the world appeared just as they had always envisioned in their dreams. This means that they now have the ability to cultivate. In the vicinity, two girls chuckled at his expense. Inquiring minds wondered what Teen was rambling about now. They joked that he had become so obsessed with cultivation that he'd lost his mind. Meanwhile, Teen Yuan paid no attention to their chatter, lost in his own daydreams. The character pondered whether becoming a dashing sword cultivator was the right path for him. The thought of being a dazzling artifact user or an enigmatic talisman master danced through his mind. However, just as he pictured himself flaunting those skills, reality struck with a jolt. Hold on. The character realized they lacked a spiritual root. He considered himself a complete failure. Thoughts of the past surged through his mind. He recalled a time when the sect master had spoken to him. Without a spiritual root, do you really believe you can pursue cultivation? It seemed as though the cosmos had shown him some mercy. Despite missing a spiritual root, he possessed an extraordinary innate herb saint body, making him exceptionally connected to plant life. The sect leader decided to overlook the usual rules and tasked him with overseeing the spiritual herb garden. Ajo is thriving impressively. However, this unique body came with its own set of challenges. The unique build of his body caused him to emit the fragrance of spiritual herbs. This was the reason. Himio leaned closer, taking a deep breath. "Senior brother Tian, you always such a pleasant scent," she remarked. Tianwan took a step backward. The issue was that proximity wasn't necessary. This was Himiao, his younger sister in the sect. They had both entered the sect in the same year, hailed from the same hometown, and naturally developed a close bond. A soft giggle escaped her lips as she nestled closer to him, unable to contain her amusement. Tianyuan sighed contentedly, remarking that being close to her senior brother also left her with a pleasant scent. The exasperated words hung in the air as he regarded the other with a mix of frustration and admiration. Relenting, he agreed to participate, if only for a short while. In his mind, he couldn't help but think, the senior brother is truly the greatest. The thought crossed their mind that perhaps life wasn't as terrible as it seemed. Just then, a serious voice interrupted the tranquility. Upon hearing the name Tianyuan, they turned to see the top disciple of the insect approaching. Tianyuan froze under her icy glare. The responsibility of the herb garden had been entrusted to him by the sect master. Was he neglecting his duties now? Did he wish to bring punishment upon himself? In a moment of hesitation, Tianyuan struggled to find his words. Laughter filled the air as she responded, "I'm on the job, senior sister." In a bid to calm the situation, someone pleaded for forgiveness. Meanwhile, a junior sister was asked to step aside while Tianyuan silently lamented his unfortunate circumstances. Himao couldn't help but wonder why it had to be her. She was known as the strictest and most intimidating figure in the entire sect, and this thought made him recoil slightly. Tian, the elder disciple, was merely an ordinary human. Tin Yuan grew anxious as he watched senior sister Wen. Was she seriously going to overwork him in this scorching weather? She seemed more fired up than ever. He Miao called out, questioning the presence of another who was lingering nearby. With a frosty tone, he reminded them that caring for the herb garden was Tin's responsibility, and suggested that they should be attending to their sect duties instead. Every day, they targeted senior brother Tian, simply because they were weaker disciples from the outer sect. Despite their words, she responded without emotion, insisting she was merely fulfilling her role as their senior sister. This made Himio's temper rise, prompting her to gather her spiritual energy. Tian Yuan declared firmly that he would not allow anyone to harass senior brother Tian. He cautioned his junior sister against acting impulsively. In an unexpected instant, the figure materialized behind Himiao and delivered a rapid strike, causing blood to trickle from her lips. Tian Yuan hurried over to stand beside her. He asked if she was all right. The character assured everyone that they were all right. A cough escaped her lips. With a steady hand, he offered her support while casting a sharp glare in Wenyu's direction. Wenyu's actions left many wondering how he could treat his own junior sister with such severity. As the senior sister, she merely played her part. She urged others to approach their responsibilities with greater seriousness, expressing her desire to see no one slacking off during work hours. The question hung in the air, directed at Tianyuan, who responded with nothing but a silent clenching of his jaw. As she departed, her gaze lingered momentarily over her shoulder. Tianyuan carefully guided Himiao to sit down on a nearby log. The task was finished without any loose ends. Fortunately, the wound is not severe. Himiao expressed his discontent, questioning why that woman deserved the title of top disciple. Tianyuan offered a word of warning. The speaker advised against making such statements, noting that although senior sister Wen had a reputation for being strict, she was always the first to offer help in times of trouble. They pointed out the irony that, even though she often singled out this individual, they were still standing up for her. The character wished for a herd of wisteria to enhance their cultivation abilities. She wouldn't allow herself to be dominated by her. Tianyuan's lips curled into a sly grin. A wisteria herb, was it? Assistance with that was something he could offer. Himayo's eyes grew wide with surprise. The individual called out, "Senior brother." The thought of thievery didn't even cross their mind. The character nodded in agreement. The word was forbidden, but he assured her not to worry. She entrusted the matter to him, flinging her arms around him in gratitude. "Senior brother, you're truly amazing," she exclaimed. The speaker exclaimed, urging the other person not to use them as a tissue for their runny nose. Without their knowledge, a hidden observer kept a watchful eye on them. Under the cloak of night, an unseen presence lingered quietly in the shadows. During this time, Tianyuan stealthily made his way into the herb garden, hidden by the darkness. The hour had grown late, and by now, everyone had retreated to their caves for meditation. This meant that the herb garden belonged to them for the night. He began tending to the herbs by giving them water and setting down talismans for control. Lately, the weeds have been growing uncontrollably. His eyes landed on the lush field filled with wisteria herbs. The wisteria herbs had grown so thick that, if left too crowded, they wouldn't thrive as they should. From the shadows behind him, an icy voice emerged. The remark seemed amusing to them. Tianyuan's face lost its color at the unexpected words. "Never have I heard you speak like that as my master, as the leader of the sect." The character insisted they had only been pulling out weeds for the other person and hoped they would trust this explanation. The leader of the sect saw right through the deception. Tianyuan's throat was seized in a firm grip by him. Even when caught red-handed, excuses flowed effortlessly. The leader instructed his troops. They pummeled him until he was barely standing. 3 followers advanced and relentlessly attacked Tianyuan. Himiao dashed over, tears spilling as he shouted. The student implored their mentor with a desperate plea. Should this continue, every one of his limbs will end up broken. Battered and covered in blood, Tianyuan gazed at her with eyes full of gratitude. As anticipated, she pleaded with him desperately. However, Himiao merely responded with a sly grin. The disciple pleaded with the master, urging him to ensure that the young man at least received a proper burial with his body intact. Tianyuan felt his heart break into pieces. He couldn't understand what Himiao meant by those words. The words were exactly as they appeared to be, addressed to senior brother Tian. Her laughter bubbled up as she teased him. "You're so clueless, it's really your own doing." For what seemed like forever, hints had been scattered, and at last, the wisteria herb was stealthily taken. Yet, there was no need for concern. Once they had departed, she would take care of the herb garden. There would be no more hiding in the shadows. The world around Tianyuan crumbled. Suddenly, a voice rang out, calling, "Master!" Tianyuan made a mistake by taking the herbs without permission. However, he was the one who encouraged him to do it. The sect master inquired if it had been at that particular moment. Was this accurate? They were completely sure and even mentioned that they had made a recording of it. Himao raised his voice in a shout. According to her, the words were nothing but deceit, driven by envy over her and Tin Yuan's relationship. The leader of the sect let out a hearty laugh. With a playful chuckle, he mused that the only thing she ever managed to steal was his heart, his precious little gem. Her fists tightened with anger. The individual resolved not to remain even a single day longer if this sect failed to distinguish between right and wrong. With a swift motion, she drew her sword from its scabbard and quickly defeated the foes threatening Tin Yuan. With a mighty swing of her weapon, she hoisted Tin Yuan's bruised form into the air and whisked him away. The subordinate urgently informed the master that the prisoners were making their escape. Himio yelled loudly. The sect master responded with a sly grin. In the midst of his fading awareness, Tin Yuan silently reminded himself, "There's no need to hurry." He wondered why she would choose to save him. As the sect master bellowed with intensity, his voice echoed with a command. "Concentrate on your own matters, you oblivious fool." With that, he unleashed a fearsome spiritual palm that forcefully drove them both to the ground. With a broad grin, he began clapping his hands with excitement. The disciple reminded the master of his vow to keep the man's body unharmed. He admitted his mistake. Even the broken bodies of herb saints hold their value. Tianyuan was on the brink of death. He realized with a start that he was still very much alive. The protagonist reflected on the moment when they were protected, with the sobering realization that being merely immortal meant their time was limited. Given the chance to begin anew, they would choose to eliminate both adversaries personally. Unexpectedly, a voice echoed through the air. The system congratulated the host, announcing that they had reached a near-death condition. With this, the Heaven's Chosen Gardener system was activated. Tianyuan offered a faint smile, remarking that the system certainly took its time. The system had been successfully activated by the host. A waking reward was being distributed. Qianyuan observed the reward. Nevertheless, the timing of the arrival was impeccable. A 1,000-year-old flower spirit seed was awarded. To awaken the flower spirit seed, it needed the blood of its host. Was it time to continue? With a determined smile, Qianyuan let his blood drip onto the seed. He didn't hesitate for a moment. Naturally, it was a given. The flower spirit seed was set into motion. Simultaneously, over in the herb garden, he proudly shared his progress. The thief Tianyuan has already been dealt with, master. Now, regarding the management of the herb garden, the sect master gestured with a wave of his hand, signaling for calm. He declared that, from this moment onward, the responsibility was solely theirs. At that moment, an unusual light started to emanate from the shattered form of Tianyuan. A disciple from a nearby sect caught sight of it, and an avaricious glint appeared in his eyes. The object appeared to be of significant worth. There was no chance the cunning witch would claim all the glory for herself, so he decided to discreetly take it for his own. However, another disciple interrupted his plan. "Wait a minute! Remember to include my portion." The initial follower extended their hand toward the luminous seed. As soon as contact was made, it started to throb and unfurl, swiftly morphing into a group of gigantic, brilliant blossoms. A surge of mystical force sent both men sprawling to the ground. The expression on the sect master's face contorted with astonishment. In utter disbelief, he gazed at the scene before him. A sense of dread washed over him as he pondered the situation. Why had an enormous flower unexpectedly blossomed in the middle of the herb garden? The sect master's face clouded with concern. There was no doubt about it. An occurrence of this magnitude could only be attributed to a great spirit that had existed for at least 100,000 years. He swiftly provided an explanation. In the world of humans, there are 4 primary levels of cultivation: heaven, earth, mystic, and mortal. Similarly, the demon race experiences a rise in spiritual power based on age, starting from a 10,000-year-old spirit, progressing to a 100-year great spirit, then and reaching up to a 10-million-year demon emperor. In comparison, most spiritual herbs thrive perfectly well, with just a small fraction of such extensive lifespans. The potential advantages of refining the spirit were beyond his imagination, and with a moment of hesitation, he let out a soft meow. The disciple expressed concern, noting that the spirit appeared entirely human and questioning how they were expected to refine her. The sect master dismissed the worry with a sharp retort, calling it nonsense. Spirits were unable to assume a human appearance. However, just as he was about to conclude his thought, the enormous petals of the flower unfurled, exposing an astonishingly gorgeous woman hidden inside. Her eyes gradually fluttered open, revealing a gaze that was both timeless and icy. After an extended slumber, the sect master's heart sank. The woman raised her hand and spoke aloud, questioning the immense power of a spirit that could take on human form. Empress Fei Ho greeted the dawn with a message through the Vlori transmission vine, summoning the 4 demon emperors. Mei Wei would see them at UL, and if you could hear, they should reply. In a tone filled with skepticism, he wondered if those idiots had truly perished in the recent battle. The sect master swiftly issued a command, shouting at another person, "You as well. Why are you just standing there? Go and capture her." Having just awoken, her ability to fight was likely at its weakest. The leader promised a generous reward to anyone who could bring the girl to him. Despite their fear, the 2 disciples pushed onward. Fei Hua's expression turned icy, her red eyes shining with a chilling light. The speaker scoffed, expressing their belief that having even one Empress ruling over the continent seemed excessive. As the group of men approached, Fei Hua launched a powerful strike. The sentiment expressed was that humanity deserved to face its end. Blades of light, resembling petals, hurtled toward the group. Terror filled one man's eyes as the petals made contact with his skin, causing his body to disintegrate into nothingness. The sound of his screams rang out for a moment before fading away into silence. Fei Hua's expression shifted into a frown. The character wondered if that was the full extent of their abilities and questioned whether their strength had truly diminished so significantly. The sect master's expression contorted with dread as he thought about her power. It was terrifying, and he realized he couldn't possibly face her in battle. The urgent desire to escape surged within him, but just as he shifted to make his jet away, Fei Hua's piercing eyes fixed intently on his every move. The girl hurled yet another surge of petals toward him, calling him a coward, but this time, they drifted harmlessly over his form. Fei Hua's eyes grew large with surprise. The character was bewildered. The target seemed untouched. Realizing the truth, they thought, "No, I've been dormant for too long. My ability is beyond my control now." The character reminded themselves to concentrate and believed that with enough focus, they could succeed. Another assault was unleashed by her. Yet the sect master remained untouched once more. The expression on his face shifted from bewilderment to amusement as laughter bubbled up from within him. With a chuckle, he realized the truth. The other had just awakened, and their power was laughably weak. Seizing the moment, he taunted, "Try handling this." With a swift gesture, he called forth his sword, its blade shimmering with a vibrant purple aura of qi. A formidable ray burst forth, hitting Fei Hua and hurling her to the ground with force. He seized her by the throat. After refining and absorbing the power, Faith was confident she would ascend to the heavenly rank. She walked away, blood trickling from her lips. Upon finally awakening, the character met an untimely end at hands of an ordinary human. From afar, Tianyuan observed the entire scene unfold. With clenched teeth, he turned his attention to his system. "This flower spirit you provided is utterly useless. It didn't even last a moment before being crushed." The system replied, "This is the micro-gardener system. To unleash the full potential of a planted spirit, the host must touch it directly." Determined despite his injuries, Tianyuan struggled to his feet and hobbled towards Fei Hua. Facing inevitable doom, the individual decided to place their trust in the system for once. As he approached her, the sect master caught sight of him. The speaker noted with surprise that their opponent was still breathing and resolved to personally deliver the final blow. Tianyuan narrowly evaded the slash, stumbling to the ground beside Fei Hua. Fei Hua gazed up at him with a feeble expression. She identified herself as Fei Hua, the demon empress of the central continent. Tianyuan growled, expressing disbelief that an ordinary human could dare to seize his hand. The speaker urged the other person to stop behaving arrogantly and simply take hold of their hand. The sect master advanced with determination. "Are you still breathing? I'll take you down personally," he declared. Fei Hua cast a piercing gaze, her thoughts dripping with disdain. To her, humans were pitiful creatures to the last breath. Despite the looming shadow of death, they had the audacity to disrespect her. However, her attention was suddenly captured by Tianyuan's extended hand. The peculiar aroma surrounding him brought an unexpected sense of comfort and calm. Her body seemed to drift toward him of its own accord, yet she was resolute in her determination to avoid any contact with a human. Before she had the chance to step back, Tianyuan swiftly caught hold of her ankle. A notification from the system rang out. The host celebrated as they successfully established a connection with the embedded spirit. A dazzling light burst forth, signaling the activation of the awakened talent. Tianyuan closed his eyes and opened them again. Fei Hua's expression contorted with incredulity as they realized the implication of the power previously mentioned. It dawned on them that they were expected to embed this powerful spirit within their danshan. Could it be that a danshan was akin to a field? How had she found herself in this situation? Strength slowly began to flow back into her. The system announced once more that spirit herbs had been successfully integrated in the dantian of the hosts. Sade's vitality seemed to shine brightly, causing the sect master's expression to twist with anger. The time for play had ended, the spirit had been taken away, and it was time for retribution. Tianyuan felt a surge of fear. He called out for help. In response, the system activated a plant, human fusion, casting a green glow over Tianyuan as his form began to change. The sound of a mighty roar filled the air as his strength intensified. With a single blow, he shattered the enormous stone gate standing at the entrance to the garden. The sect master narrowly evaded the attack, his complexion turning ghostly white as he glanced back at the gate, now in ruins. Sweat trickled down his forehead. He wondered, what on earth is this power? Tianyuan hovered above the ground, transformed into a blend of human and plant. His arms were entwined with vines, and his skin shimmered with glowing petals. The system joyously declared, "Plant-human fusion form unlocked." Tianyuan gazed at his reflection, letting a groan of disbelief. "Really? That's the name you chose? You couldn't come up with something more impressive?" The duo cowered in terror, nervously glancing out from their hiding spot. Oh my gosh. One of the onlookers leaned in closer, murmuring in disbelief. That sword move was incredible. Could this truly be the same Nept Tianyun were familiar with? Tianyuan stood with a serene demeanor, observing the energy pulsating within his grasp. The character lamented that their ability to maintain control was still quite poor. He grumbled quietly as the slash went astray. There's no way he should have missed from such a close range. As the sect master simmered with fury, Tianyuan struck once more with a fierce assault before he had the chance to retaliate. The sect master's gaze expanded in astonishment. The sheer magnitude of that power. The sight was horrifying. What had happened to the child's body? The blow was barely deflected in time, but Tianyuan had swiftly moved behind him, ready to unleash yet another assault. The blade grazed him this time, leaving a faint mark. Tianyuan's smile held a chilling edge. The speaker intended to use the other person's blood as the catalyst for their rise to greatness. The sect master, although visibly disturbed, chose to remain quiet. Summoning his courage, he let out a fierce growl, branding the other as a reckless fool. The sect master questioned the reckless swordsman, doubting whether his wild swings and thirst for blood would truly lead to his ascent. Suddenly, the sect master underwent a transformation, his presence intensifying dramatically. Tianyuan and Feiho were both frozen in disbelief. Feiho let out a scornful laugh as the sect master mocked, accusing someone of being a complete pervert. The Xian sword technique purple mood was set into motion. In an instant, he lunged toward Tianyuan with a speed greater than ever before. Tianyuan evaded the attack with agility, all the while observing the incredible swiftness, impressive speed. Did the opponent really believe their purple aura could affect a cultivator attuned to plant elements like him? The pair engaged in a fierce conflict, their blows and defensive maneuvers illuminating the battleground. One of the sect leader's strikes eventually found its mark, breaking a portion of the mask that covered Tianyuan's face. The leader of the sect flashed a wicked grin as he launched another assault. Even with all that immense strength, they remained worthless. Feiho observed the battle unfolding within Yuan's mind, aware that years of cultivation and experience had built an insurmountable advantage. She wondered just how long the challenger could endure. As anticipated, she pondered with a heavy heart. Despite possessing her abilities, a simple human struggled to manage it effectively. Was she truly destined to meet her end just after regaining consciousness? A sudden glimmer of light drew her attention. The character wondered aloud about the mysterious object in front of them. In the open air, Tianyuan mocked the leader of the sect. The young writer informed her that he had penned more than a dozen novels centered around cultivation themes. It was the first occasion anyone had mentioned to them that they were lacking in experience. The technique involves enhancing the blade by infusing it with high-frequency spiritual energy. The sect master's face turned grim as he questioned the possibility of the feat being achieved. He had not anticipated that the sword Tianyuan wielded could heal itself. Tianyuan, with a confident grin, affirming that the weapon was now both extended and more acute. Upon listening to their absurd exchange, Feiho yelled in frustration, demanding that the two fools start fighting properly. Tianyuan let out a soft laugh. At its core, every cultivation method revolves around the management of spiritual energy. They needed to cast it forth and hold it back. The character urged the onlookers to pay close attention as they demonstrated their signature maneuver. Amidst the flourishing flowers, a colossal blast erupted, causing the ground to tremble fiercely and hurling the sect master through the air. Feiho's eyes grew wide with realization as the truth of the situation dawned on her. Using the unique abilities of plants, he harnessed spiritual energy with increased speed, then released it in a powerful burst. This showcased his mastery over controlling spiritual energy. Their achievements even exceed those of their own. Tianyuan, however, continued without pause. Dozens of spiritual attacks, each resembling a flower, were conjured erupted like bombs around the sect master. From a distance, Mia observed anxiously, her heart racing with worry. The old man was actually falling behind Tianyuan, much to everyone's surprise. The sect master, now gravely injured, dropped to one knee, pondering if all the sacrifices had been in vain. He pleaded desperately, "Hold on. Out of respect for our master-disciple relationship, please show mercy. You can have the herb garden. One can appreciate Mayo in any way they please." Tianyuan's lips curled into a sinister smirk. The character assured the other that their life would be spared. The connection they once shared was shattered by the actions of that deceitful girl. The suggestion was clear: end her life, and perhaps they could mend their fractured relationship. The sect master gave a nod in agreement. Indeed, that deceitful and slanderous individual was deserving of punishment. Nia's complexion drained of color as she spun around, her steps quickening in a frantic escape, while a cry escaped her lips. The young woman cried out in desperation, unwilling to meet her end. However, before she could make her escape, the sect master attacked from behind, driving a blow through her chest. For the sake of the master, they urged the individual to put themselves on the line, at least for the moment. Feiho observed the scene with a stern expression, thinking to herself that the troublesome kid wouldn't remain in their current situation for much longer. She promised silently to seek revenge in due time. The naive, tender-hearted failed to grasp the harsh reality of human cruelty. Without warning, she observed an unexpected event. Tian Yuan lifted his hand and unleashed a conclusive, destructive assault that resulted in the demise of the sect master. In his final moments, the elderly gentleman let out a gasp. The character felt deceived by the other person's actions. Tian Yuan chuckled, recalling how his experience in crafting countless novels had taught him the typical ways in which antagonists like this one behaved. In that instant, a seed of the spirit flower sprang forth from Tian Yuan's body, transforming into a stunning blossom. The draining of energy rendered him feeble, causing him to stumble. Fei Hua stood in front of him, her lips curving into a mischievous smile. The creature observed with interest, finding the humans to be quite fascinating. The tyrant demanded that the other person kiss their toes and pledge undying loyalty as a personal servant, offering a slim chance of mercy in return. Tianyuan's hand shook as he extended it forward, yet he ended up brushing her foot aside instead. The speaker declared that the other person had truly lost their senses. The spirit that had been summoned appeared to be attempting to claim him as her master. The plea to face reality resonated in the air. Overcome with anger, Fei Hou let out a loud shout. The speaker seethed with anger, vowing to personally end the life of the wretched child. As soon as she approached Tian Yuan, her demeanor changed noticeably. A sense of confusion washed over them as they realized they had just been struck by a human. The reason behind the fluttery sensation puzzled her. Something was amiss. His entire presence exuded an irresistible charm. Overcome by an irresistible urge, she seized Tian Yuan and pressed her lips to his. Things were not looking good. Tian Yuan found herself completely unable to move, her body refusing to obey her commands. She stood there, paralyzed by shock. Meanwhile, Fei Hou withdrew, her cheeks burning with anger and embarrassment. Their voice trembled with anger as they exclaimed, "You jerk, that was the first time I've ever been kissed." Tian Yuan attempts to snap Fei Hou out of her daze by shouting. What did Fei Hou think she was doing? Yet, she stayed in a trance, softly muttering. Tian Yuan pondered silently, realizing it still fell short. Simply being close to him revitalizes her wary body. Out of the blue, Fei Hou leans in for another kiss. Meanwhile, Tian Yuan tightens his fists, his mind resolute there will be no escape. A sharp intake of breath escapes him. Fei Hua, gasping for air, exclaimed that she had nearly been suffocated. Laughter echoed as they declared with satisfaction, "That ought to suffice." She pondered briefly, but in the very next instant, she shook off her stupor, her eyes blazing with anger. The creature seethed with rage, shouting at the human, "Curse you, vile mortal! What sort of sinister enchantment have you inflicted upon me? Release me this instant, or I'll make sure you regret it." In response, Tianyuan argues that it was the other person who initiated everything. He insists he didn't make any moves and accuses them of being the one who took his first kiss as soon as they shout up, calling them a huge pervert. Flustered, Fei Hou shouted in response, questioning if the other person thought it was also her first kiss. The score between them is now settled. Tian Yuan gazes at her, his eyes wide with astonishment. Fei Hou incredulously remarked on the fact that despite being a demon of 10,000 years, this was their very first kiss. The person questioned whether it concerned the other individual at all. The idea was preposterous. Powerful demon behaving foolishly in front of an ordinary human. Even if they managed to rescue him, he would still be more useful as a silent, lifeless body. Tian Yuan raises his voice in a shout. Fei Hua's attention was drawn away as a sense of unease washed over them, interrupting the conversation about silencing that had been happening so nonchalantly. Surprised, they realized their powers were making a comeback. The question arose, was this human the cause? Seizing a chance to flee, Tian Yuan makes a bold move to break free. At the same time, Fei Hua contemplates the situation. Whenever this human is nearby, the irresistible urge to absorb his energy overwhelms them. He realized with frustration that he would eventually need to eliminate him. For the time being, she decided to harness his energy to regain her power. With a swift motion, she conjured her vines and ensnared him once more. Tian Yuan shouted defiantly, warning against any mischief, as he asserted his authority by declaring himself the master. Fei Hua paid no attention to him. Tian Yuan shouted urgently, "I need more!" Confused, Fei Hua questioned, "What exactly do you want from me?" Fei Hua insists it isn't sufficient, far from it. She starts to lick his skin, drawing in his energy. Tian Yuan shouted desperately, pleading with Fei Hua not to bite him. In response, Fei Hua spoke. The character yearned for more energy, exclaiming their desire to absorb additional power. Yet something seemed off, prompting them to question what the issue was. The individual felt compelled into the situation by someone else's actions. Tian Yuan feels as though his spirit is slipping away from him, unable to endure even for a moment longer. In a feeble voice, he murmurs, "I can't. There's not a drop left." Fei Hua let out a derisive sound, dismissing the situation with a huff, and declared that mercy would be granted for the time being. Tian Yuan grumbled, warning that this was far from finished. Fei Hua retorts sharply, calling their opponent a beast. "Why am a plant?" In her heart, she frets. The strength she recovered might disappear after just one battle. This man cannot perish just yet. At that moment, the voices of the disciples resonated from outside, signaling that the formation had been restored. Without hesitation, the call to action urged everyone to move swiftly indoors as a group of disciples hurriedly made their way inside. A gasp escaped one of them. The aura of the sect master had vanished. A different student called out, announcing the arrival of Xian Sing to assist the sect master. Xian Sing, known as the second senior brother of the insect sect, had reached the mid-stage of the Yellow Realm in his cultivation journey. Fei Huan squinted her eyes and gestured towards them accusingly. She wondered where these nuisances had emerged from. Alarmed, Tin Yuan shouted for them to halt. The command to refrain from attacking left Fei Hua puzzled. Tin Yuan observed that a majority of the disciples appeared to be quite innocent. Fei Hua paid no heed to his concerns and swiftly struck Tin Yu in the head with a kick, readying herself for another assault. The threat was clear: if they didn't leave, their lives would be in grave danger as well. A powerful and frightening explosion erupts from her. The disciples narrowly evaded the attack, shaking with terror. In disbelief, Fei Hua whispered, "Did it miss?" The voice of frustration echoed as someone accused the young troublemaker of resorting to deceit. Meanwhile, Tanwan, with great effort, managed to escape the clutches of the entangling vines. The reminder echoed, emphasizing that they had originated from his dantian. Without obtaining approval, the use of power remains restricted. Yet, Fei Ho delivers a punch to his face, her laughter echoing around them. Laughter erupted as it became clear that not even their own peers valued the assistance offered. The human race, as anticipated, consists of ungrateful creatures. Observing Tian Yuan from a distance, Shin Sing strides over and firmly plants a foot on his chest. The speaker acknowledged the accuracy of the other person's statement, noting that he had just finished battling Master Zan. He likely felt worn out from his efforts. When she eventually took on the role of sect master, she planned to generously reward everyone. The henchman joined in the conversation, expressing disbelief. Could he have truly vanquished the sect master? They then showed gratitude, saying, "We appreciate your help, second brother Shun." Meanwhile, Tin Yuan was taken aback and exclaimed, "Have you lost your mind? I'm attempting to rescue you." Despite the situation, Shen Xiang remains indifferent, unleashing a brutal assault on Tian Yuan. "Perish. With your demise, the position of sect master will belong to me. The horned woman will also meet the same fate." He chuckled. Fei Ho was filled with rage and shouted angrily, demanding that the person show some respect and stop speaking such vile words. She vehemently denied being associated with him as his woman. However, when Tianyuan suddenly coughed up blood, Fei Ho was shocked to find herself also spitting blood in astonishment. As Xian Sing lifted his sword to deliver the final blow to Tianyuan thought to himself, "If that hammer strikes me, I won't survive." Drawing from the last reserves of his plant form's energy, he knew it was time to act. With a surge of determination, he only shed a powerful strike, sending Xian Xing hurtling backward. The disciples were filled with panic as they called out for their senior brother, Xian. Xian Xing clenched his jaw as he read, saying, "I'm fine." The thought danced in his mind, convincing himself that the opponent's attack was merely a bluff. Tang Yuan rose to his feet, unscathed and determined. The character questioned if the other believed him to be bluffing, and suggested they might already be experiencing an unusual warmth below their stomach. Shin Chen glanced downward, bewildered. Upon reflection, he realized it was actually quite comfortable. "My pants," he thought. Meanwhile, Tian Yuan couldn't help but grin. The technique was formidable, yet she was the one who could shatter every method. The character announced that they had infused spiritual energy into the other person's dantian. Feeling a wave of embarrassment, Axon Singh let out a low growl. The statement was merely a pathetic attempt to scare him into wetting himself, as his opponent's power was only at the early stages of the Yellow Realm. With determination fueling his movements, Tianyuan rushed forward once more, his voice rising as he exclaimed that they refused to listen. Axion Singh bellowed with a fierce intensity, declaring that he would truly give a harsh beating. The position of sect master rightfully belongs to him. As the two began to tussle like little kids, Feiwa couldn't help but let out a yawn. The situation felt utterly dull, yet there was a glimmer of potential. The question arises of how a person could harness the power meant for demons. She decided that if the item was of no use to her, she would simply return it to him. She concentrated intently and directed her energy towards Tianyuan. The mysterious voice warned the young human not to let them down. Out of nowhere, Tianyuan experienced an unexpected rush of energy. His gaze fell upon his hand, which shimmered with a vibrant pink aura of demonic energy. With a swift and powerful motion, he delivers a blow to Xiangsing. The impact resonates with a thunderous boom. Xiangsing's garments burst apart, leaving his body quaking uncontrollably. The force of the shockwave causes a nearby mountain to collapse into rubble. The disciples were taken aback, gasping in shock. The mountain had been obliterated by an immense force. Such a display of frightening power left Xiangsing so terrified that he dropped to his knees. Tianyuan pleaded, acknowledging his earlier ignorance of the sect master's power. "Please have mercy." Meanwhile, the sect master thought to himself, "Refrain from addressing me as sect master and instruct everyone to depart. Zion's sect is done for. I nearly took a life." A sense of relief washed over him as he realized his restraint had paid off. That unexpected surge of energy could only be her handiwork. He turned his attention towards Fiwa. In a moment of resolve, the speaker declared that no chaos would unfold as long as they remained present. Meanwhile, Feihoa, lost in contemplation, suddenly interjected with a sharp, "Be quiet." She pondered over the situation. That technique he employed had merged with demonic energy, enhancing it in the process. The narrator described their people as strong, yet they struggled with accuracy. The narrator mused that humans secured victories through their ingenious strategies. Had demonic power been as adaptable, the narrator would have triumphed in the war millennia ago. Tianyuan carefully placed Winnie on the ground. Kneeling on the ground with a weighty heart, he gazes at her form. The protagonist questioned the system, desperately seeking an alternative. In response, the system answered. The system had reached the limits of its capabilities. Within a week, the body of the host's senior sister will begin to decompose. In a quiet moment, Tianyuan reflects on memories from days gone by. The few years they had known one another were filled with memories that were far from pleasant. However, it dawned on them today that they had completely misinterpreted the other person. The speaker realized that their senior sister had never aimed any hostility towards them. She had always been the brave and virtuous leader. His hands press against his chest, and his eyes quiver with emotion. He wondered if there was truly nothing he could do to help her. In the cultivation world, he believed firmly that there must exist a miraculous treasure capable of restoring her. He called out with determination. The character instructed the system to score the realm for any life-saving spiritual plants. As the system initiates its scan, an array of countless options unfolds before him. Tianyuan's face lights up with a grin. Hi, that's the Heavenly Gardener system at work. Naturally, it includes an entire encyclopedia of plants. I suppose those 10 years spent crafting web novels didn't go to waste after all. The system search complete. 15 results located. The system displayed the results mycelium cordillers. The corpse sect utilized this technique to bring the dead back as the living undead. The Emperor of Blue Silver. The spirit of the plant gains control over the body. Head Qing conjures the appearance of bringing someone back to life, yet the individual remains deceased. Teen Yuan's expression shifted into a frown. In disbelief they exclaimed, urging the others to take the situation seriously. The host was bewildered by the ridiculous choices presented. Meanwhile, the system responded with a serene assurance that there was no reason for alarm. Teen Yuan decided to review each item individually. However, his attention was suddenly drawn to something unexpected. Before it starts to break down, the everlasting lotus root must be planted. Those who have passed away will be brought back to life as lotus spirits, retaining their memories and personalities. Teen Yuan's heartbeat quickens. The item in question was the sole means to safeguard her consciousness, yet it would strip her of her humanity. His fists tightened as he cried out loudly. The priority was clear. Rescuing her was the most important task. System initiated. The system responds plainly, directing that the position of the immortal lotus root be noted. The system lacks a feature for monitoring plants. Tianyuan's patience wears thin, and he bursts out in frustration. The individual questioned the system's usefulness, while the system remained composed and undetectable. In the meantime, Feihor roamed around the sect grounds, while another person possessed the ability to do so. Her face twisted into a skull. Darn it, she muttered under her breath. The young woman was puzzled by how a sect so small could conceal a vast collection of spiritual plants. Just then, the sound of cries for assistance reached her ears. As she rounded the corner, she discovered that the plants, now animated and alive, were launching an assault on the disciples, biting, wrapping around, and devouring them. The disciples cried out in terror, while Feihua grinned slyly. In a mocking tone, he addressed the creatures, understanding their hunger for the flesh of cultivators. He urged them to feast, gain strength, and eventually rise as his formidable army. She knelt down to examine the plants closely. These are in remarkable shape, she thought. Whoever grew them must have exceptional gardening talent. At that moment, a voice she recognizes fills the air. Someone ordered them to halt immediately. From behind the dense shrubbery, Teen Yuan suddenly emerges, calling out, "AGL!" The character exclaimed with surprise, "What on earth has happened? How did my garden transform into a jungle?" The character sternly reminded them not to consume any humans. The plants were softly reprimanded by him, much like one would do to naughty pets. He urged them to release any disciples they might have consumed, coaxing them to comply. In a surprising turn of events, the plants complied, letting go of the frightened disciples without causing them any harm. Impressed, Feiho observed with curiosity. Fascinating, the notion that spiritual plants would heed his words had never crossed his mind. Other than the 4 demon emperors and him, there was no one else to be found. Teen Yuan's face lights up with pride. Naturally, one should never undervalue the connection he shares with his tiny verdant companions. In that moment, a plant suddenly engulfs him completely. Tiny One stifled a sound. Feiho let out a sigh, her thoughts swirling as she demanded to be released. EW was surprised that he had given names to those barely conscious weeds. The scene evoked a sense of disgust. The woman shifts her gaze to the disciples, who were quivering. It was evident that their intention was to pilfer the herbs. The narrator observed with disbelief how they were being forgiven not once, but twice. In a swift decision, she decided to nourish the flowers with them. She used vines to ensnare the disciples, who began to cry out and plead desperately for assistance. The group called out to their second senior brother, Shingsing, pleading for his help. Fiwa had already ensnared Shinsing in vines, much to their dismay. Just then, Tianyuan emerged from the plant's mouth with a sigh, acknowledging that the true perpetrator was no more. He declared indifferently that whether the others lived or died was of no concern to him. However, he inquired if anyone knew the whereabouts of the immortal lotus root. With a hint of amusement, Faihoa asked if he was trying to rescue someone. Tianyuan affirmed, explaining that he owed his senior sister a debt for saving his life and needed to repay it. He pleaded for directions to the lotus root. Feihoa, crossing her arms, asserted her status as the ancestor of all flowers and claimed she vivid recollection of their kiss suddenly bursts into Feihoa's thoughts. The color rushed to her cheeks. She delivered a swift kick to his face. The word shameless echoed in the air. With a frosty tone, she steered towards the disciples and demanded, exchange their lives for the lotus root. Otherwise, abandon any hope of obtaining it. The disciples cried out in alarm, pleading, hold on, can you two carry on your flirting without involving us? Caught in a moment of stillness, Tianyuan finds himself deep in thought, silently cursing. In a tale of cultivation, the ruthless main character would have dispatched these minor characters long ago. In reality, one cannot simply go about taking the lives of others. The individual had transformed into a serial killer. It seemed clear that he wasn't destined to be a tough and self-assured MC. Determined to take a new path, he moved forward and called out loudly. Fairy Faiho declared that the worthless lives of the scoundrels were now forfeit. Initially they had attempted to grasp power, and then they dared to steal sacred spirit herbs. Such acts were beyond forgiveness. He dramatically insisted that if Xianzhenren were still among the living, it would have spelled disaster for the other person. Fairy Faiho, known for her kindness, faced the task of restoring her formidable army of plants. The question hung in the air, pondering the next steps. The offer was clear. Guidance on nurturing spiritual plants was on the table. To cultivate warriors who are tall, fierce, and mighty is the goal. After all, Fairy Faihoa has no desire to command a tiny army, correct? With a blink and nod, Faiho murmurs in agreement. Indeed, well put. Wait, what? The speaker questioned the value of having a legion of mindless plants, almost falling for the young one's clever ruse. Tianyuan's smile widened. As the guardian of the flowers, could he truly bear to watch these helpless blossoms remain neglected? Feiho gazed thoughtfully at the vines, finding them somewhat charming. With a sigh, she freed the disciples and spoke. The individual reluctantly agreed but demanded results. If those entrusted with the care of the plants failed in their duty, the individual vowed to take matters into their own hands. The disciples lowered themselves in a deep bow, expressing their gratitude to Fairy Feihoa for her mercy. The individuals expressed their gratitude to Sect Master Tianyuan for rescuing them. They pledged unwavering loyalty to the Xian sect, vowing to serve it until their last breath. Tianyuan exhaled with exasperation, his eyes rolling skyward. He had reached his limit and firmly requested some distance, assuring that he would reach out when assistance was required. As they dashed away, he pondered his new role. So, I'm the sect leader now. Well, I suppose that's just how things turned out for me, he mused. Turning his attention to Feihoa, he declared, Their destinies are in your hands now. Will you finally reveal the mortal lotus root? With a cunning grin, Feihoa responded while strolling off. Shimefi, I only hope you survive long enough to find it.